Next up, we have Evan Scrimshaw, and he's going to go over how to bet kicker props for the Super Bowl. So, Evan, go ahead and take it away.
For this year's Super Bowl, kickers are actually one of the more lucrative markets available to bet on if you know what you're looking for. The biggest market for them is total points kicked. For both Butker and Jake Elliott, you have a line of 7.5, which is interesting depending on how you think the game is going to go. Both offenses are favored to score more than 2.5 touchdowns, offensive touchdowns in this game, which means that if you think that bet hits, then you think that both teams need to score at least 5 offensive possessions need to end in a score for them to hit their numbers. With Jake Elliott, that seems unlikely. Not that the Eagles couldn't score that many points, but they just don't kick that many field goals. With the Eagles only averaging 1.4 field goal attempts per game in the regular season, and as we know, Nick Sirianni's been quite willing to be aggressive in the playoffs, it's unlikely that the 7.5 is going to hit for Elliott. Butker has a better chance too because the Chiefs kick 1.9 field goals per game, and we know that Andy Reid doesn't get more aggressive in the playoffs, as seen by his punt from the opposition 37 in the wildcard round, or in the championship round. And even if Pat Mahomes is more healthy than he was, he still wasn't particularly mobile in the conference championship game. And if that means that the Chiefs are going to have some offensive upside, but maybe not as much offensive upside, then maybe they're not going to be able to get 3 touchdowns. Maybe they're going to have more drives stall out, and that means Butker is a much better bet over 7.5 total than Jake Elliott. For the same reason, Butker's a much better bet in a head-to-head matchup. Butker only minus 120 at Caesars Sportsbook. Because there's the half field goal advantage in terms of regular season average field goal attempts. Butker has the leg to hit from deep. We know Andy Reid is not as aggressive as Sirianni, and we know that Sirianni is willing to run Jalen Hurts in key moments. We know that they're willing to take a 4th and 5 in the NFC Championship game on that first drive. Like, Sirianni just isn't going to get into a field goal kicking competition if he can avoid it, and so Butker is a great bet there. On over field goals made, I think Elliott under minus 1.5, over under 1.5, it makes a lot of sense. They've averaged 1.4 so far this season. The Eagles are not going to kick field goals unless they have to. Sirianni is not about kicking field goals, and so I think that's good. Butker over 1.5 makes sense. The problem is though there's a chance that the Chiefs fall behind in this game, especially if Mahomes isn't 100%. In which case they just kind of can't kick. They just can't kick field goals because they have to just keep going for it. But if you think the Chiefs are competitive in this game, Butker over his 1.5 makes a lot of sense. And then the biggest thing, I think, the most interesting one for me is the overall over-under on point after attempts. The Eagles are minus 200 in market to score more than 2.5 offensive touchdowns. But there's about an 80-cent gap between what you'd pay on over 2.5 touchdowns and what you'd pay on over 2.5 field goal or point after attempts. For Jake Elliott, like, unless the Eagles need to, they're not going to go for 2. I know they can be aggressive, and I know they do trust their offense, but that 80-cent gap makes Elliott, if you think the Eagles are going to score a lot of points in this game, that makes that 80-cent gap much more valuable. For the Chiefs, it's only a 40-cent gap in VIG. You're only getting a 40-cent reduction for Butker over 2.5, and I think the Chiefs against that Eagles offense, or against the Eagles defense, I think is going to be a much harsher competition for them. Lastly, some books have a fun novelty prop, which is will there be a doink, a ball that hits the upright or the crossbar. It might be fun, and if you're an Eagles fan and you believe in the karma of Nick Foles against the Bears, you might want to put a little money on for peace of mind. But doinks, as fun as they are, the reason we remember them so well is because they're really rare. So I wouldn't go about putting a lot of your money on that, but it's a fun prop. And with all props, good luck with the Super Bowl bets, and hopefully you make some money.